Dr. Sarah Chen pressed her back against the cold metal wall of the medical bay, her breath coming in sharp gasps as the ship shuddered under another barrage of plasma fire. The emergency lights cast everything in an eerie red glow, and through the reinforced viewport, she could see the massive form of the albino dragon writhing in the vacuum of space, her pearl-white scales reflecting the laser bursts like scattered starlight. The creature was magnificent and terrifying at once. Nearly 300 meters from nose to tail, she moved through space with an impossible grace, her translucent wings somehow propelling her forward despite the lack of atmosphere. Ancient beyond measure, she was the last of her kind, and the Galactic Council had just signed her death warrant. Sarah's hands shook as she checked her medical scanner again. The readings were impossible to ignore. Deep within the dragon's massive form, tucked safely in a biosac near her heart, was a developing offspring. The heat signature was unmistakable and the life signs were strong. This wasn't just the execution of an ancient creature, it was genocide. "All medical personnel evacuate immediately," came the cold voice of Commander Vex through the intercom. The Centaurian officer had shown no emotion when delivering the Council's orders 3 hours ago. "The target will be eliminated in 15 minutes. Sarah grabbed her emergency medical kit and ignored the evacuation order. She had taken an oath to preserve life, and she wasn't about to watch 2 innocent beings die because some bureaucrats on distant worlds feared what they didn't understand. The dragon had never attacked anyone. Her only crime was existing in a universe that had grown too small for wonder. The ship lurched again as the dragon's tail swept past their hull. She wasn't fighting back, Sarah realized with growing horror. The ancient creature was simply trying to escape, to find somewhere safe for her unborn child. But there was nowhere to run. The Council's fleet surrounded her on all sides, their weapons charging for the final assault. Sarah made her way to the emergency pod bay, her mind racing. The pods were designed for evacuating crew members, but they could be modified. If she could get close enough to the dragon, if she could somehow communicate. The idea was insane. The dragon was the size of a city block. Her intelligence was completely alien, and Sarah was just one human doctor with a crazy plan. But as she watched the creature through the bay's viewport, Sarah saw something that made her heart skip. The dragon's massive eye, easily 20 meters across, had focused on their ship. And in that ancient gaze, Sarah saw something unmistakably familiar. The desperate love of a mother trying to protect her child. The dragon's hide was scarred from centuries of survival, marked with the evidence of a dozen wars she'd outlasted. Legend said she'd been alive when humans were still discovering fire, that she'd watched civilizations rise and fall like waves on a cosmic shore. Now she was alone, the last keeper of mysteries that would die with her. Sarah's fingers flew over the pod's control panel, overriding safety protocols and rerouting life support systems. She had maybe 10 minutes before the fleet opened fire. 10 minutes to attempt something that had never been tried, something that would either save 2 lives or end her own. The pod's engines hummed to life, and Sarah sealed herself inside the tiny craft. Through the reinforced canopy, she could see the dragon banking away from the fleet, her movements growing more frantic as the weapons platforms locked onto her position. The creature's mental capabilities were beyond human understanding, but her maternal instincts were universal. As Sarah ejected from the ship and began her intercept course, she activated every medical scanner she had. The readings were clearer now, and what she saw made her gasp. The unborn dragon wasn't just alive, it was aware. Its neural activity was off the charts, showing signs of intelligence that surpassed most adult species. This wasn't just a baby. This was potentially the most advanced mind in the galaxy, and it was about to be destroyed because of fear and ignorance. The mother dragon noticed Sarah's approach and slowed her flight. Those ancient eyes fixed on the tiny pod, and Sarah felt a presence touch her mind. Vast, alien, but somehow gentle. Images flooded her thoughts. Memories of a universe young and wild, of other dragons soaring through nebulae like cosmic birds, of a time when wonder ruled the stars instead of bureaucracy. But beneath the memories was a plea, desperate and clear. The dragon wasn't just asking for her own life. She was begging someone, anyone, to save her child, to give her offspring a chance to carry on the ancient wisdom that would otherwise die in the cold vacuum of space. Sarah's hands trembled as she began transmitting on all frequencies, her voice carrying across the void to every ship in the fleet. "This is Dr. Sarah Chen, Chief Medical Officer. I'm reading life signs of an unborn offspring inside the target. Under Galactic Medical Ethics Code 77 Alpha, I'm invoking emergency protection protocols for the preservation of sentient life. The response was immediate and harsh. Dr. Chen returned to the ship immediately. The execution will proceed as planned. The Council's orders are absolute. But Sarah was already maneuvering her pod closer to the dragon, her scanners painting a detailed picture of the creature's biology. The unborn offspring was nearly ready to emerge, its development accelerated by its mother's distress. If the mother died now, the child might survive for a few minutes in its biosac. But without proper care, it would perish. The dragon's massive head turned toward Sarah's pod, and again that presence touched her mind. This time the message was different. It wasn't a plea anymore, it was a gift. Knowledge flowed into Sarah's consciousness. The dragon's biology, the needs of her offspring, the ancient rituals of birth and protection that had sustained her species for millions of years. And with that knowledge came a terrible understanding. The dragon was dying anyway. Her life force was fading, worn down by centuries of loneliness and the energy required to sustain her pregnancy in the harsh void of space. The Council's execution would only speed the inevitable. But her child could live. With the right care, with someone who understood the ancient ways, the last dragon could survive and grow. The mother's sacrifice would not be in vain. As the fleet's weapons reached full charge and targeting locks engaged, Sarah made a choice that would change the course of galactic history. She opened a direct communication channel to the dragon and whispered 4 words that carried the weight of worlds. I will save her. The dragon's massive form convulsed as the first plasma bolt struck her ancient hide. Sarah watched in horror as scales that had withstood cosmic radiation for millennia began to crack and burn, but the creature didn't cry out. Instead, she curled her enormous body around Sarah's tiny pod, using herself as a shield against the fleet's devastating firepower. Ceasefire. Ceasefire! Sarah screamed into her communicator, but her words were lost in the chaos of battle. The Galactic Fleet had their orders, and nothing would stop them from carrying out the Council's judgment. Nothing except the determination of one human doctor who refused to let genocide happen on her watch. Inside the protective cocoon of the dragon's embrace, Sarah worked frantically with her medical equipment. The knowledge the dragon had shared was overwhelming. Biological processes unlike anything in human medicine, energy patterns that defied conventional science, and birth rituals that were part surgery, part mysticism. But Sarah was a fast learner, and desperation sharpened her focus. The dragon's vital signs were failing rapidly. Each plasma blast weakened her further, and Sarah could feel the creature's pain through their strange mental connection. But even as her life ebbed away, the dragon's protective instincts remained strong. She was buying time for her child, using her last moments to ensure the continuation of her species. Through the mental link, Sarah felt the dragon's urgent communication. The birth was beginning. The offspring could no longer wait for the violence to end. It had to emerge now while its mother still lived to guide the process. Sarah activated every scanner she had, mapping the dragon's internal structure in real time as the ancient creature began the most important act of her long life. The biosac containing the offspring began to glow with an inner light, and Sarah realized this wasn't just biology. It was something far more profound. The dragon species didn't simply give birth. They passed on their accumulated knowledge, their memories, their very essence to their young. The process required precise timing, specific energy frequencies, and most importantly, the presence of another sapient being to witness and validate the transfer. That's why the dragon had sought out Sarah. Not just for medical help, but for something humans possessed in abundance, the ability to recognize and nurture potential in others. The dragon had sensed this quality in Sarah from the moment their minds first touched. Another barrage of weapons fire struck the dragon's protective bulk, and Sarah felt the creature's strength failing. They were running out of time. The biosac was ready to open, but the delicate process required absolute precision. One mistake could kill both mother and child. Sarah's hands moved across her medical instruments with practiced skill, adapting human technology to serve an alien biology. She rerouted her pod's power systems to match the energy frequency the dragon needed, turning her tiny craft into a makeshift incubator. The mathematics were insane. The physics should have been impossible, but somehow it worked. The biosac began to open, revealing a creature no larger than Sarah herself. The baby dragon was perfect. Her scales were the same pearl white as her mother's, but they seemed to contain an inner fire that pulsed with each heartbeat. Her eyes, when they opened, held an intelligence that was both ancient and newly born. But something was wrong. The offspring wasn't breathing properly. The trauma of birth combined with the violence surrounding them had disrupted the delicate process. Without immediate intervention, the last dragon would die within minutes of being born. Sarah didn't hesitate. She sealed her medical suit and prepared to leave the safety of her pod. The void of space was lethal to humans, but her emergency gear would give her maybe 5 minutes of protection. It would have to be enough. As Sarah emerged from her pod into the dragon's protective embrace, she felt the full weight of the creature's failing life force. The mother dragon was using the last of her energy to maintain a small pocket of atmosphere around her child, but even that was fading fast. Sarah had to work quickly. She activated her portable medical unit and began administering emergency care to the newborn dragon. The procedures were unlike anything she'd ever attempted. Part respiratory therapy, part energy manipulation, part pure intuition, guided by the knowledge the mother had shared. But Sarah's hands were steady, her mind clear despite the chaos around them. The baby dragon's breathing stabilized and those ancient eyes focused on Sarah's face. In that moment, Sarah felt a connection form that transcended species, the bond between caregiver and patient, protector and protected. The tiny creature was beautiful and terrifying at once, her potential vast beyond measure. The mother dragon's massive head lowered toward her offspring, and Sarah felt the final transfer beginning. Millions of years of accumulated wisdom, the history of a species that had ruled the cosmos when most current civilizations were still primordial soup, flowing from one generation to the next. But the process was incomplete. The mother was too weak to finish what she'd started. That's when Sarah understood her true purpose. She wasn't just meant to deliver the baby dragon. She was meant to be part of the knowledge transfer, to add her own species' understanding to the ancient wisdom being passed down. Human ingenuity, human compassion, human stubborn refusal to accept the impossible. These would be gifts to help the last dragon survive in a universe that no longer wanted her to exist. Sarah placed her gloved hands on both mother and child, becoming a conduit for the transfer. Knowledge flowed through her like lightning, not just information but understanding at a level that touched her very soul. She saw the universe through dragon eyes, felt the weight of eons, understood the true scope of what was being lost and what might be saved. The mother dragon's eyes began to dim, but there was peace in them now. Her child lived, breathed, and carried within her mind the seeds of everything their species had ever been. More than that, the offspring now carried something new, a bridge between dragon wisdom and human determination. As the final transfer completed, the baby dragon made her first sound, not a roar but something almost like a purr. She was speaking to Sarah, acknowledging her not as a strange alien but as family. The connection they'd forged in these desperate moments would last a lifetime. The mother dragon's massive form began to still, her life force finally spent. But her sacrifice had accomplished something miraculous. Her daughter lived, and with her, hope for the future. The baby dragon was small now, vulnerable, but Sarah could sense the power sleeping within her. Given time to grow, to learn, to become what she was meant to be, she could change the galaxy. The fleet's weapons fire was slackening as commanders realized their target was no longer moving. They thought they'd won, that the threat was eliminated. They had no idea that they'd actually witnessed the birth of something that would challenge everything they thought they knew about power, wisdom, and the future of galactic civilization. Sarah gathered the baby dragon close, her tiny form warm against the cold of space. They were surrounded by enemies, millions of kilometers from the nearest safe haven, but somehow Sarah wasn't afraid. She had a job to do, raise and protect the most important being in the galaxy. And she'd be damned if she let anyone stop her. Sarah's pod drifted silently through the debris field that had once been the great Albino dragon. The Galactic fleet was already withdrawing, their mission apparently complete. They had no idea that their true target was alive and growing stronger by the hour in the arms of a human medic they'd written off as collateral damage. The baby dragon, whom Sarah had named Luna, for her pearl-white scales that seemed to glow with inner moonlight, was unlike anything in the medical textbooks. She was learning at an impossible rate, her neural pathways developing in real time as the ancient knowledge inherited from her mother began to integrate with her own experiences. Every few hours brought new abilities, new understanding, new proof that this tiny creature was destined for greatness. But first, they had to survive. Sarah's pod was running on emergency power, its life support system strained beyond design limits. Luna needed a specific atmospheric mixture that Sarah was improvising from her medical supplies, and food was becoming a critical issue. The baby dragon's metabolism was unlike anything Sarah had ever encountered. She seemed to derive energy directly from ambient radiation, but also needed trace minerals that weren't available in standard emergency rations. Worse, Sarah's unauthorized departure from the fleet hadn't gone unnoticed. Her comm system crackled with increasingly urgent messages from Commander Vex, demanding her immediate return. Each transmission made it clear that her career was over. Her medical license would be revoked and criminal charges were pending. But Sarah had stopped caring about her future the moment she'd felt Luna's tiny heartbeat against her chest. "Dr. Chen, you have exactly 1 hour to return to the fleet before we classify you as a deserter and traitor to the Galactic Council," came Vex's latest message. "Your actions today have been noted and will be dealt with accordingly." Sarah switched off the communicator and focused on more important matters. Luna was trying to communicate, her large eyes fixed on Sarah's face with an intensity that was both unnerving and wonderful. The mental connection they'd shared during the birth had grown stronger, and Sarah was beginning to understand the complex emotions and thoughts flowing through the baby dragon's developing mind. Luna was grieving. Despite her youth, she understood that her mother was gone, that she was alone in a universe that wanted her dead. But beneath the grief was something else, a fierce determination that reminded Sarah strongly of human stubbornness. Luna wouldn't just survive. She would thrive, learn, and eventually reclaim the stars that were her birthright. Sarah's scanners detected an approaching ship, but it wasn't from the Galactic fleet. The vessel was smaller, older, with modifications that spoke of independent operation rather than military service. As it drew closer, Sarah recognized the distinctive hull markings of a freelance research vessel. Exactly the kind of ship that operated in the gray areas between legal and illegal, asking questions that governments preferred to ignore. The ship's communication system crackled to life, and Sarah heard a gruff human voice with a distinct Earth accent. "This is Captain Marcus Webb of the research vessel Prometheus. We monitored the engagement and detected your pod's distress beacon, requesting permission to bring you aboard." Sarah hesitated. Trust was a luxury she couldn't afford, especially with Luna's safety at stake. But her pod systems were failing, and without help they'd both be dead within hours. Sometimes survival required taking calculated risks. "This is Dr. Sarah Chen. I have a medical emergency requiring immediate assistance. But I'm warning you, if you're working with the Council, if this is some kind of trap, you'll regret it." Captain Webb's laugh was warm and genuine. "Lady, I haven't worked with the Council since they tried to shut down my research into pre-galactic civilizations. My crew and I make our living studying things the government doesn't want studied. If you've got something they want dead, that makes you interesting to us." The Prometheus moved alongside Sarah's pod with practiced precision, and she felt the gentle vibration of docking clamps engaging. Luna stirred in her arms, those ancient eyes studying their surroundings with keen intelligence. The baby dragon seemed to sense that this was a crucial moment, a decision that would shape both their futures. As Sarah prepared to board the research vessel, she made a silent promise to Luna and to the memory of her mother. Whatever came next, she would never let this remarkable being become a specimen, a weapon, or a victim of political fear. Luna was the last of her kind, but she was also the first of something new, a bridge between the ancient wisdom of the dragons and the boundless potential of younger species. The airlock cycled open, and Sarah got her first look at the crew of the Prometheus. Captain Webb was a weathered man in his 50s, his eyes bright with the curiosity that drove all great explorers. His crew was a mix of species, humans, Eldorians, a crystalline engineer whose mineral-based form sparkled in the ship's lighting, and others Sarah didn't immediately recognize. But it was Dr. Elena Vasquez, the ship's xenobiologist, who made Sarah's heart skip with hope. The elderly scientist took one look at Luna and gasped, her hands trembling as she recognized exactly what she was seeing. Mother of stars, Dr. Vasquez whispered. That's not just a baby dragon. The neural density readings, the energy signatures. This creature has the genetic memory of an entire species encoded in her DNA. She's a living library of pre-galactic civilization. Captain Webb's expression grew serious as the implications hit him. The council ordered the mother's death because they feared what she represented, knowledge and power they couldn't control. But they have no idea what they've really unleashed. Sarah felt Luna's tiny hand grip her finger with surprising strength, and through their mental link came a flash of understanding that took her breath away. Luna wasn't just inheriting her mother's memories. She was integrating them with her own observations, creating new insights, new possibilities that had never existed before. The baby dragon was evolution in action, not just biological but intellectual and spiritual. She was what her species could become when freed from the isolation that had defined their existence for millions of years, and she was choosing humans as her partners in that evolution. Dr. Vasquez began setting up equipment to monitor Luna's development, her excitement barely contained. The possibilities are endless. If we can understand how she processes and integrates information, how she adapts ancient knowledge to current situations, we could revolutionize everything from medicine to engineering to philosophy. But Captain Webb raised a cautioning hand. First, we need to keep her alive and hidden. The council thinks the dragon threat is eliminated. But if they discover the truth, they'll stop at nothing to finish what they started. We need somewhere safe, somewhere they'll never think to look. Sarah looked down at Luna, who was watching the adults with keen interest, those ancient eyes missing nothing. The baby dragon made a soft sound that might have been agreement, and Sarah felt a surge of protective determination. They would find a safe haven, a place where Luna could grow and learn without fear. But even as plans took shape around them, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Luna was destined for something greater than hiding in the shadows. The baby dragon carried within her the seeds of change that would reshape the galaxy. Whether the Galactic Council was ready for it or not, the Prometheus changed course, heading for the Outer Rim territories where questions weren't asked, and governments held little sway. Behind them, the fleet continued its withdrawal, satisfied that they'd eliminated an ancient threat. They had no idea they'd actually guaranteed its return in a form more powerful than they could imagine. Luna made another soft sound and curled closer to Sarah, trust absolute despite everything she'd already endured. In that moment, Sarah understood that she wasn't just protecting a baby dragon. She was nurturing the future itself. The research station on Kepler 442b was a marvel of hidden engineering. Built into the side of a dormant volcano on a planet officially classified as uninhabitable, it served as home base for Captain Webb's network of independent researchers, rebels and truth-seekers who operated outside galactic law. The station's existence was known only to a select few, and its defenses were designed to keep it that way. Sarah stood in the main laboratory, watching Luna explore her new environment with boundless curiosity. In the 3 weeks since their rescue, the baby dragon had grown at an astonishing rate. She was now the size of a large dog, her pearl-white scales beginning to show hints of the iridescent patterns that would mark her as an adult. More importantly, her intelligence was developing at a pace that left even Dr. Vasquez struggling to keep up. Luna had learned to communicate through a combination of telepathic images and vocalizations that the station's computers were gradually translating into recognizable language patterns. Her first clear word had been Sarah, spoken with a musical quality that brought tears to her caretaker's eyes. Her second had been safe, followed quickly by home. But it was Luna's questions that truly revealed her extraordinary nature. She didn't just want to know what things were, she wanted to understand why they existed, how they connected to everything else, and what they might become. Her inherited dragon memories provided context for everything she observed, but she was filtering that ancient knowledge through a fresh perspective that often led to insights none of the adults had considered. The star patterns have changed since Mother's time. Luna had observed the previous evening, her young voice carrying an odd mix of childlike wonder and ancient wisdom. New civilizations have risen, but they build small. Why do beings limit themselves when the universe offers so much space? Dr. Vasquez had been documenting every aspect of Luna's development, and her findings were revolutionary. She's not just accessing genetic memories. the xenobiologist explained to Sarah as they watched Luna practice flying in the station's main hangar. She's actively rewriting them, updating ancient knowledge with current observations. It's like watching evolution in fast forward. Luna's flying lessons were both beautiful and terrifying to observe. Despite her young age, she moved through the air with instinctive grace, her wings creating energy fields that shouldn't have been possible according to conventional physics. She was teaching herself to manipulate gravity, electromagnetic radiation, and forces that human science was only beginning to understand. But it was her empathy that truly set her apart. Luna had quickly bonded with every member of the research station, offering comfort to the lonely, inspiration to the discouraged, and wisdom to those facing difficult decisions. She seemed to understand that her survival depended not just on hiding from enemies, but on building connections with potential allies. The station's chief engineer, a crystalline named Resonance, had become particularly attached to Luna. The mineral-based being's natural harmonic abilities complemented the dragon's energy manipulation, and together they'd begun experimenting with technologies that merged organic and inorganic systems in ways that shouldn't have worked, but somehow did. "Small dragon teaches much," Resonance had told Sarah in the being's chiming voice. "Shows how all energies connect, how barriers between living and non-living are illusion. She will build bridges between worlds that have forgotten how to touch." But their peaceful sanctuary was about to be threatened. Captain Webb's latest intelligence reports painted a disturbing picture of galactic politics. The Council wasn't satisfied with their apparent victory over the albino dragon. They were launching a comprehensive investigation into dragon sympathizers and xenophilic terrorists who might pose a continuing threat to galactic stability. Sarah's name was at the top of their wanted list, along with detailed psychological profiles suggesting she'd been corrupted by exposure to dragon influence. The official story painted her as a deranged scientist who'd betrayed her own species out of misguided attachment to an alien monster. Bounty hunters throughout the galaxy were being offered substantial rewards for information leading to her capture. "They're not just looking for you," Captain Webb warned during their daily briefing. "They're systematically investigating anyone who's ever shown interest in pre-galactic civilizations, dragon mythology, or alternative approaches to species interaction. My contacts are going dark one by one." Luna listened to these discussions with growing concern, her empathic abilities allowing her to sense the fear and tension among the adults who'd become her family. She was beginning to understand that her mere existence put everyone she cared about in danger. One evening, as Sarah was conducting Luna's daily medical examination, the young dragon asked a question that cut straight to the heart of their dilemma. "Would it be better if I went away? If I left so they couldn't use me to hurt you?" Sarah's hand stilled on her instruments and she felt her heart break a little. Luna was barely a month old, but she was already willing to sacrifice herself to protect others. It was a level of selflessness that put most adult beings to shame. "No," Sarah said firmly, pulling Luna into a gentle embrace. "We're family now. Family doesn't abandon each other, no matter how dangerous things get. We'll find a way through this together." But even as she spoke the words, Sarah wondered if she was being unfairly optimistic. The Galactic Council commanded vast resources, and their fear of dragon influence was driving them to increasingly extreme measures. How long could a small research station hold out against the combined might of galactic civilization? The answer came sooner than expected. Dr. Vasquez burst into the laboratory, her face pale with urgency. "We've got incoming ships. 3 Council destroyers closing fast. They found us." Alarms began sounding throughout the station as crew members rushed to their emergency positions. Luna's eyes widened with fear and determination, and Sarah felt the young dragon's mind reaching out, testing the extent of her growing powers. "I can help," Luna said, her voice steady despite her youth. "The memories show me things, ways to use energy that Council ships aren't designed to handle. But I need to be in space where there's room to move." Captain Webb shook his head firmly. "Too dangerous. You're still too young, too small. The vacuum of space could kill you." But Luna was already moving toward the hangar, her movements purposeful and sure. "Mother survived in space for centuries. I carry her knowledge, her strength. And I carry something more, the hope she gave me. The future you've all helped me build." As Council ships began their attack run on the research station, Sarah realized they were about to discover just how powerful the last dragon could become when fighting to protect those she loved. Luna might be young, but she was also the heir to millions of years of cosmic wisdom, tempered by human compassion and backed by the stubborn determination of beings who refused to surrender to tyranny. The battle for Luna's future was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. The emergency session of the Galactic Council erupted in chaos as footage from the Kepler 442b incident played on screens throughout the chamber. Representatives from 300 worlds watched in stunned silence as the young dragon demonstrated abilities that defied every scientific principle they thought they understood. But it wasn't Luna's power that terrified them most. It was the way she'd converted an entire council fleet to her cause without firing a single shot. Chancellor Mordak, a stern Zentorian who'd held power for decades through careful manipulation of fear and prejudice, pounded his gavel repeatedly as delegates shouted accusations and demands across the assembly floor. The carefully constructed narrative about dragon aggression was crumbling before his eyes, and with it, his political empire. Order! Order! Mordak bellowed, his metallic voice cutting through the din. The fact remains that this creature represents an unprecedented threat to galactic stability. The contamination of 3 entire destroyer crews proves that dragon influence is insidious and far-reaching. But opposition was building rapidly. Commander Thane had transmitted detailed reports from the encounter, including testimonies from his crew about what they'd actually experienced. The recordings painted a very different picture from the official council propaganda, and several prominent delegates were beginning to ask uncomfortable questions. Representative Kayla from the Aldorian systems stood to address the chamber, her crystalline features reflecting the light in patterns that conveyed deep emotion. Chancellor, we've reviewed the historical archives that were classified after the dragon purges. The evidence clearly shows that dragons were protectors, not aggressors. How do you explain the systematic suppression of this information? Mordak's response was sharp and immediate. Ancient history is irrelevant. What matters is the present threat. This creature has already corrupted human military personnel and civilian researchers. It must be eliminated before the contamination spreads further. But the Chancellor's words fell on increasingly skeptical ears. More delegates were accessing the classified archives, discovering truths that had been hidden for generations. The dragons hadn't been tyrants or conquerors. They'd been the closest thing the galaxy had ever had to benevolent guardians, using their vast power to prevent wars, guide young civilizations, and preserve knowledge through cosmic disasters. Meanwhile, on Kepler 442b, an unlikely alliance was taking shape. The 3 destroyer crews had joined forces with Captain Webb's researchers, creating a small but determined group dedicated to protecting Luna and spreading the truth about dragon history. The young dragon herself had become the heart of this movement, her wisdom and compassion inspiring beings of every species to reconsider their assumptions about power and purpose. Luna had grown significantly since the encounter, her body now the size of a small spacecraft, but it was her mind that truly impressed everyone around her. She was integrating ancient dragon knowledge with modern scientific understanding, creating innovations that solved problems no one had even known existed. Her collaboration with the crystalline engineer resonance had produced energy systems that were both impossibly efficient and artistically beautiful. Dr. Vasquez documented each breakthrough with barely contained excitement. She's not just accessing genetic memories anymore. She's actively building on them, creating new knowledge by combining dragon wisdom with everything she learns from us. We're witnessing the birth of a completely new form of intelligence. But Luna's greatest achievement wasn't technological. It was social. She had a remarkable ability to bring out the best in everyone around her, encouraging former enemies to work together and inspiring individuals to exceed their own limitations. The destroyer crews, trained for combat and conditioned to follow orders without question, were transforming into explorers and teachers under her influence. Sarah watched these changes with pride and growing concern. Luna was becoming everything her mother had hoped and more, but the target on their backs was growing larger by the day. Intelligence reports indicated that Chancellor Mordak was assembling a massive armada to cleanse the outer rim territories of dragon influence once and for all. We need to move, Captain Webb announced during their daily strategy meeting. My contacts report at least 50 ships massing at the Rigel staging area. They're planning something big, something designed to end this permanently. Commander Thane nodded grimly. The Chancellor can't allow the truth to spread. Too many people would start questioning other official narratives, other convenient lies. We represent more than just opposition to dragon policy. We're challenging the entire foundation of his authority. Luna listened to these discussions with the gravity of someone far older than her months of existence. She understood that her choice to emerge from hiding had consequences beyond her own safety. Every being who stood with her was risking everything: their careers, their freedom, potentially their lives. "I won't ask anyone else to sacrifice for me," Luna announced, her voice carrying the harmonics that made everyone present feel her sincerity. "But I also won't surrender to fear. The galaxy needs to know that there's another way, that cooperation can achieve more than conflict ever could." It was Dr. Vasquez who suggested the solution that would change everything. What if we don't wait for them to come to us? What if we take the truth directly to the people, broadcast it across every communication network in the galaxy simultaneously? The idea was audacious and incredibly dangerous. Such a transmission would reveal their location to every enemy in the galaxy, but it would also make their message impossible to suppress. Once the truth was public, Mordak's ability to control the narrative would be severely limited. Luna's eyes lit up with excitement and determination. Yes, let the galaxy see what we really are, what we're really fighting for. Let them choose between fear and hope with all the facts before them. Over the next week, the Unlikely Alliance worked tirelessly to prepare for the most important broadcast in galactic history. They compiled evidence from the classified archives, testimonies from the converted destroyer crews, demonstrations of Luna's peaceful intentions, and most importantly, her vision of what the galaxy could become. Resonance and Luna collaborated to create a transmission array that could penetrate every communication network simultaneously, making the broadcast impossible to block or filter. The technology merged dragon energy manipulation with crystalline harmonic resonance, creating something that was as much art as science. Sarah spent hours coaching Luna on her presentation, helping the young dragon understand how to communicate complex ideas to beings who'd been conditioned to fear her very existence. But as the broadcast day approached, Sarah realized that Luna needed no coaching. The dragon's innate wisdom and compassion would speak for themselves. The night before the transmission, Luna approached Sarah with a request that nearly broke the human doctor's heart. "If something happens to me, if they manage to stop the broadcast or capture me, I want you to continue the work. Help beings understand that evolution isn't about becoming stronger or more dominant. It's about becoming more connected, more capable of love." Sarah pulled the dragon close, feeling the warmth and strength of the being she'd helped bring into the world. "Nothing's going to happen to you. We're family, remember? Family protects each other." But even as she spoke the words, Sarah knew they were approaching a moment of truth that would determine not just Luna's fate, but the future of galactic civilization itself. Tomorrow the galaxy would hear the voice of its last dragon. What they chose to do with that message would define what kind of future they deserved. Luna burst from the research station's hidden hangar like a comet of pearl and starlight, her young form cutting through the planet's thin atmosphere with impossible grace. The 3 Council destroyers had expected to find a defenseless research facility hiding forbidden knowledge. They had no idea they were about to face something that would redefine their understanding of power itself. Sarah watched from the station's command center, her heart hammering against her ribs as she tracked Luna's energy signature on the tactical display. The young dragon was still so small compared to the massive warships bearing down on them, but her readings were unlike anything the sensors had ever detected. Energy flowed around her like liquid lightning, responding to her will in ways that made the station's physicist weep with joy and terror. "Impossible," whispered Commander Thane, the lead destroyer's captain, his voice crackling over the intercepted communications. "Sensors are showing massive energy displacement, but there's nothing out there except—" "What is that thing?" Luna answered by demonstrating abilities that the Council's scientists had declared theoretically impossible. She began to sing, a hauntingly beautiful melody that resonated through space itself, creating harmonic frequencies that made the destroyer's hull plating vibrate. But this wasn't just music. It was mathematics given voice, physics expressed through pure artistic beauty. The song was having an unexpected effect on the attacking ships. Their weapon systems began to malfunction as the harmonic frequencies disrupted their targeting computers. Energy conduits sparked and failed as Luna's melody found the resonant frequencies of their construction materials. Within minutes, the three most advanced warships in the galaxy were reduced to floating metal sculptures. Beautiful but powerless. But Luna wasn't content to simply disable the ships. Through the mental link she shared with Sarah, her intentions became clear. She wanted to communicate with the crews to help them understand what they were really fighting against. The young dragon had inherited her mother's ancient wisdom, but she'd also absorbed human concepts of mercy and redemption. Luna approached the lead destroyer, her form now wreathed in energy that made space itself seem to bend around her. She pressed her consciousness against the ship's hull, and suddenly every crew member aboard could hear her voice in their minds. Not threatening or alien, but warm and unmistakably alive. "I know you fear me." Luna's mental voice carried the weight of eons and the innocence of youth. "Your leaders told you I was a monster, a threat to everything you've built. But I am not here to destroy. I am here to grow, to learn, to become something greater than what came before." Commander Thane staggered as images flooded his mind, memories of ancient dragons soaring through primordial space, building wonders that spanned star systems, nurturing young civilizations and teaching them to reach for the stars. He saw the truth the Council had hidden. Dragons had never been destroyers. They had been teachers, guardians, the wise elders of a galaxy that had forgotten how to dream big. "The records," Thane whispered to his crew, "the classified archives. The dragons weren't conquerors, they were protectors. We've been lied to." Luna's influence spread to the other ships as she shared more of her inherited memories. The crew saw their own species' histories from a different perspective, understanding how dragon intervention had saved their ancestors from disasters, wars, and cosmic catastrophes. The great albino dragon they'd just killed hadn't been a threat. She'd been trying to preserve knowledge that could benefit everyone. But the most powerful revelation came when Luna shared her vision of the future. She showed them what the galaxy could become if different species worked together instead of competing out of fear. Cities that floated through space like living art, technologies that merged science with wisdom, civilizations that measured success not by conquest but by beauty, growth, and understanding. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face as she experienced the vision through her link with Luna. The young dragon wasn't just the last of her kind, she was the first of something entirely new. A being that could bridge the gap between ancient wisdom and modern innovation, between the cosmic perspective of her mother's people and the passionate determination of younger species. The effect on the destroyer crews was immediate and profound. These were military personnel, trained to follow orders without question, but they were also sapient beings capable of recognizing truth when it touched their souls. One by one, they began to question the mission that had brought them here. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Kaya from the second destroyer, her voice shaky with emotion, "I'm reading massive irregularities in crew psychological profiles. The entity, it's not attacking us. It's trying to communicate, and the images it's sharing, they contradict everything we've been told about dragon hostility." Commander Thane found himself facing the most difficult decision of his career. His orders from the Council were clear. Eliminate all traces of dragon influence, arrest or destroy anyone who'd been contaminated by exposure to alien thought patterns. But those orders had been based on lies, and now he was seeing the truth. Luna seemed to sense his internal struggle and gently withdrew from the crew's minds, giving them space to process what they'd experienced. She maintained her position between the destroyers and the research station, her energy fields creating a protective barrier that was both beautiful and absolutely impenetrable. "This is Commander Thane to all ships," came the voice over the communicator, heavy with the weight of a choice that would define the rest of his life. "Stand down weapons. Repeat, stand down all weapons. We need to reassess the situation." From the research station, Captain Webb activated the communication system. "Commander, this is Captain Marcus Webb. I know this isn't what you expected to find, but what you're seeing is the truth the Council doesn't want you to know. That young dragon isn't a weapon or a threat. She's hope for a better future." Thane's response came after a long pause. "Captain Webb, my orders were to arrest you and your crew for harboring illegal xenobiological specimens and conducting unauthorized research. But what I'm seeing here, this changes everything." Luna floated in space between the opposing forces, her young form pulsing with gentle light that seemed to calm everyone who looked upon her. She had grown since leaving the station, Her exposure to cosmic energies accelerating her development in ways that amazed even Sarah. The dragon was adapting in real time, becoming what she needed to be to protect those she loved. "Commander," Luna's voice reached Thane directly, bypassing all communication systems through pure telepathic contact. "I understand your duty to your people, but duty should serve truth, not fear. Let me show you what my mother saw in the humans who tried to save us." The image that filled Thane's mind was of Sarah in her medical pod, risking everything to reach a dying dragon in the vacuum of space. He felt Sarah's desperation, her absolute refusal to let innocent life be destroyed, her willingness to sacrifice her career and freedom for the sake of doing what was right. It was the kind of heroism that transcended species, the sort of moral courage that the galaxy desperately needed. "Dr. Chen," Thane said, opening a direct channel to the research station, "I need to speak with you." Sarah's voice was steady despite the impossible circumstances. "I'm here, Commander. And before you ask, I regret nothing. Luna is not a weapon or a monster. She's a child who's lost everything, and she deserves a chance to grow up in peace." "I'm beginning to understand that," Thane replied, "but the Council will never accept this. They're too invested in their fear, too committed to the narrative that dragons represent an existential threat. If I report what I've seen here, they'll send a larger fleet, one that won't be swayed by visions or appeals to conscience." Luna's response surprised everyone. Instead of fear or anger, she radiated calm determination. "Then we don't hide anymore. Mother spent centuries running, hiding, trying to avoid conflict. But I won't live that way. The galaxy needs to see what we really are, not what they fear we might become." Captain Webb's voice crackled over the comm. "That's incredibly dangerous. Luna, the moment you reveal yourself publicly, every bounty hunter, fanatic, and military force in the galaxy will come after you." "Let them come," Luna replied, her young voice carrying an authority that reminded everyone of her ancient heritage. "But they'll find something they don't expect. Not a monster to be destroyed, but a teacher ready to share knowledge that could benefit everyone. And I won't be alone. I'll have friends, allies, people who understand that the future belongs to those brave enough to build bridges instead of walls." Commander Thane felt something shift inside him as he listened to the young dragon speak. This wasn't the voice of a creature driven by instinct or ancient programming. This was someone making a conscious choice to stand up for what she believed in, despite the risks. It was exactly the kind of courage he'd joined the military to protect. "Dr. Chen," Thane said slowly, "what would you need to ensure Luna's safety while she pursues this course of action?" Sarah's surprise was evident in her voice. "Commander, are you saying what I think you're saying?" "I'm saying that sometimes orders based on lies aren't really orders at all. They're suggestions, T." The transmission began at 1800 Galactic Standard Time, penetrating every communication network from the core worlds to the most remote outposts. In council chambers and cargo holds, in university lecture halls and mining platforms, in military command centers and family homes, beings across the galaxy suddenly found their screens filled with the image of a young dragon, whose pearl-white scales seemed to glow with inner light. Luna floated in space above Kepler 442b, the planet's volcanic landscape providing a dramatic backdrop for her historic address. She had grown again in the days leading up to the broadcast, her form now magnificent but somehow still radiating the warmth and innocence that had won the hearts of everyone who'd met her. When she spoke, her voice carried across the void with a clarity that touched souls as much as ears. "People of the galaxy," Luna began, her words translated simultaneously into thousands of languages and communication methods. "My name is Luna, and I am the last of the ancient dragons. You have been told that my kind were monsters, conquerors who ruled through fear and domination. I am here to show you the truth." The images that followed were pulled directly from Luna's genetic memories, vast archives of dragon history that revealed a completely different story. The galaxy saw ancient dragons serving as mediators in conflicts between young species, using their power to prevent wars rather than start them. They witnessed dragons sacrificing themselves to shield developing worlds from cosmic disasters, their bodies forming protective barriers against asteroid impacts and stellar flares. Chancellor Mordak's voice could be heard screaming orders in council chambers across dozens of worlds, demanding that the transmission be blocked, that emergency protocols be activated. But Resonance's harmonic technology had made the broadcast impossible to interfere with, and Luna's message continued to spread like wildfire through the galactic communication grid. We were never your rulers, Luna continued, her voice heavy with inherited sadness. We were your guardians, your teachers, your friends. And when you grew strong enough to stand on your own, we stepped back, allowing you to find your own paths among the stars. My mother was the last of those guardians, and she died protecting knowledge that could benefit all of you. The broadcast showed footage from the original engagement, but not the sanitized version the council had released. This was the complete recording, showing the great albino dragon's desperate attempts to escape rather than fight, her protective stance around Sarah's medical pod, and her final moments transferring ancient wisdom to her daughter. The galaxy watched a mother's sacrifice, witnessed the birth of hope in the cold vacuum of space. But it was what came next that truly captured the imagination of billions of viewers. Luna began to demonstrate her abilities not as weapons of war but as tools of creation. She sang, and her voice shaped energy into forms of impossible beauty. Flowers of light that bloomed and danced in the void. Geometric patterns that spoke to the mathematical harmony underlying all existence. Colors that touched emotional centers most beings didn't know they possessed. This is what I offer, Luna said, as the light sculptures swirled around her. Not domination but collaboration. Not conquest but creativity. The ancient knowledge my mother preserved, combined with the innovations and dreams of all our galaxy's peoples. Together, we could build wonders that would make the stars themselves weep with joy. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Communication networks across the galaxy lit up with messages of support, wonder, and hope. Beings who had never questioned council propaganda found themselves moved to tears by Luna's demonstration. Scientists demanded access to dragon knowledge. Artists begged to collaborate on cosmic sculptures, and ordinary citizens began asking why their leaders had hidden such beauty from them. On Earth, humanity's homeworld, mass demonstrations erupted in support of Dr. Sarah Chen and her dragon companion. Humans had always been proud of their species' tendency toward compassion and protection of the innocent, and Luna's story resonated deeply with those values. Signs reading "Humanity stands with dragons" appeared in major cities, while human politicians began demanding explanations from their representatives to the Galactic Council. The Eldorian systems formally announced their withdrawal from council authority, declaring their intention to establish diplomatic relations with Luna's growing alliance. The Crystalline Collective followed suit within hours, with Resonance serving as their official ambassador to the dragon. Smaller worlds began defecting in groups, no longer willing to support an organization built on lies and maintained through fear. But Chancellor Mordak wasn't finished. As Luna's broadcast reached its climax, long-range sensors detected the massive armada he'd assembled moving toward Kepler 442b at maximum speed. 50 of the most powerful warships in the galaxy, equipped with weapons designed to crack planets and sterilize entire star systems. The Chancellor had decided that if he couldn't control the narrative, he would end it permanently. Luna sensed the approaching fleet long before the sensors detected them, her consciousness extending across vast distances through means human science couldn't yet explain. She could feel the hatred and fear driving the approaching ships, but also something else. Doubt and confusion among many of the crews who'd witnessed her broadcast. "They're coming," Luna announced calmly to her assembled allies. 50 ships armed with planet killers. The Chancellor means to end this conversation permanently. Sarah felt her heart sink, but Luna's response surprised her. Instead of fear or anger, the young dragon radiated a calm determination that seemed to strengthen everyone around her. "Then we'll have to make sure the conversation is too big to end," Luna said. "It's time to show the galaxy what we can accomplish when we work together instead of fighting each other." What happened next would be remembered as the moment everything changed. Luna reached out through the communication network, still carrying her broadcast, touching the minds of beings across the galaxy with a simple invitation: "Help me show them what the future could look like." The response was immediate and astounding. From thousands of worlds, beings began to contribute their knowledge, their creativity, their dreams for a better tomorrow. Scientists shared breakthrough discoveries, artists offered visions of cosmic beauty, engineers proposed technologies that could revolutionize space travel. All of it flowed through Luna, who began weaving the collective imagination of the galaxy into something magnificent. Above Kepler 442b, space itself began to change. Energy patterns emerged that transformed the void into a canvas for collaborative creation. Aldorian crystalline engineering merged with human ingenuity. Centaurian mathematical precision combined with dragon wisdom, and countless other contributions from species throughout the galaxy. Together they began building something that had never existed before, a structure that was part space station, part work of art, part symbol of what could be achieved through cooperation. The approaching council fleet found themselves facing not a small research station and a single dragon, but a growing coalition of worlds united in creative purpose. More ships were arriving hourly, not warships, but vessels filled with scientists, artists, engineers, and dreamers who wanted to be part of building something wonderful. Chancellor Mordak's armada slowed as they approached this unprecedented sight. Many of the crew members had watched Luna's broadcast, and they were struggling to reconcile the orders to destroy her with the evidence of her peaceful intentions. Some ships began requesting new orders while others simply stopped advancing altogether. Luna addressed the fleet directly, her voice reaching every consciousness aboard the approaching warships. You came here to destroy a monster that never existed. Instead, you found a community of beings who believe the galaxy can be more than a collection of fearful worlds hiding behind weapons. Join us if you're brave enough to help build rather than destroy. One by one, ships began breaking formation and requesting permission to join the growing alliance. Their crews were tired of serving fear and destruction, inspired by the possibility of being part of something greater. By the time the standoff ended, only a handful of vessels remained loyal to Mordak's regime, and they found themselves vastly outnumbered by beings who had chosen hope over hatred. Sarah watched from the observation deck of the growing space station as Luna floated among the ships, welcoming former enemies as new friends. The young dragon had done more than survive her mother's death. She had transformed it into the foundation for a new kind of galactic civilization. The galaxy would never be the same. In just a few hours, Luna had proven that dragons weren't monsters to be feared, but teachers to be treasured. More importantly, she had shown that the future belonged to those brave enough to build bridges instead of walls, to create rather than destroy, to choose love over fear. As Luna's laughter echoed through space, carried on frequencies that touched the hearts of beings across dozens of worlds, Sarah knew that her promise to the dying albino dragon had been fulfilled. The last dragon lived, learned, and led, and in doing so she had given the galaxy back its sense of wonder. The age of fear